Tolkien's Legendarium is teeming with terrible monsters, but their pure and good counterparts remain far too few. As soon as one mentions pure and good creatures, our minds inevitably dash to the eagles too, thanks to the Peter Jackson adaptations. But what if I told you the most powerful and fearless of the Middle-earth creatures was absolutely another? Huan, the Wolf of Valinor. The wolf story is a classic good versus evil trope, with one exception. Huan gets himself into far too many battles with some of the worst villains around. Sauron, Carcharoth, and a bunch of dirty werewolves, and comes out on top every time. If you've begun flipping through the books to figure out who Huan is, how did he become so powerful, and what is his story, let's help you out with that. But before we get into it, we have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's roll. Who is Huan, the Hound of Valinor? There's a timeless theme at the heart of all of Tolkien's works. It's about courage and resolve to protect all that is beautiful and good in the face of most definite evil. Huan, the Hound of Valinor, encapsulates this idea perfectly. Huan, roughly translated to the Great Hound, was born in Valinor. He was the hunter Vala, Orome's novice, standing as tall as a horse, with lush white-gray fur. Huan was a handsome wolf dog, but he was not your regular purebred prize, not in the least. Huan was a highly sentient hound, who would not tire or age. He did not even need to sleep. Under Orome's guidance, Huan, the chief of the Wolfhounds, learned to track and hunt evil creatures. That tutelage instilled in Huan an Ainur-level skill, if not spirit. Huan's life story is loaded with instances that prove just how deeply he understood the people he consorted with and what was right or wrong, even trumping the elves and men with his intelligence when the time called for it. These traits exhibited by Huan transcended the nature of ordinary animals, and this fact did not escape Orome's notice either. The Vala blessed him with gifts of power and speech. There was also a keen prophecy surrounding Huan. It was said that Huan could not be killed by anyone except the greatest wolf that ever lived. Sadly, Huan would go seeking this end for himself, rather than sitting out a battle between good and evil. Huan origins. During his early years in Valinor, the Vala Orome had conferred Huan with many powers. He grew with Vala's spirit abound and became a large, strong, and intuitive presence. He could understand all that was being said to him. All languages spoken by all living things. He could also speak 3 times in his life. What a neat judge of character Vala Orome is to bless Huan. So one would think, right? As it turns out, for everything that Orome was, he was certainly not the best at judging a person's character. Orome, as some of you Tolkien fans may recall, is the Vala that first found the elves after they had awakened. This was when he was down in Middle-earth on one of his hunts. Afterward, he maintained a great friendship with the elves, especially Celegorm, a son of Feanor, whom he had taught to read animals and birds, and also to hunt. But in this friendship, Orome made a grave mistake. He gave Huan to Celegorm. Celegorm would later prove to be totally undeserving of Huan's loyalty and a complete menace. Huan followed Celegorm into exile to Middle-earth with the rest of Feanor's lot, while Celegorm and his brother Curufin dedicated themselves to retrieving the Silmarils their father had created. Their time in Middle-earth, especially Nargothrond, was stained with pride, and sometimes even greed. However, Huan stuck with his master through thick and thin. There came a time in their lives when Morgoth sacked Celegorm and Curufin's realm of Himland, and they had to take flight to Nargothrond. This is when Celegorm began acting a little sketchy, and this new development sure didn't skip Huan's attention. Huan in the Silmarillion. Huan's story is penned in the Silmarillion section titled of Beren and Luthien. Now, the fans are divided in how they feel about the Silmarillion as a read, but you cannot deny that Beren and Luthien is the most incredible love story in Tolkien's lore, and Huan played a pivotal role in it. In fact, in all fairness, he was their saving grace. This is how it went. One fine day in the age of year 465 of the First Age, a man called Beren arrived at the court of Finrod, the king of Nargothrond, who had given his cousin, Celegorm, a home in his realm. Beren was on a quest for the Silmaril gems that now bejeweled Morgoth's crown, and asked for Finrod's help. Finrod was bound by an oath to Beren's father and decided to accompany Beren. However, this scenario did not go down well for Celegorm. He rose against Finrod, claiming that the Silmarils belonged to Feanor's sons, him being one of them. Celegorm and Curufin succeeded in planting fear into Finrod's people. Steadfast to his oath, Finrod left with Beren, accompanied by a small company that was yet loyal to him. Celegorm and his brother continued to poison the elves of Nargothrond against Finrod, hoping to usurp his crown while he was gone. As you can see, at this point in the timeline, Celegorm and his brother were consumed with ambition and went proper bad. You must wonder, that Beren guy does not sound like a jewel thief. Why was he trying to rip Morgoth off, out of all people? It was for the woman he loved, Luthien. While it's the oldest cliche in the world, that crazy life or death kind of love still gets me. Does it not you? Anyway, Luthien wasn't a vain queen bee type who wanted the Silmarils for her new bracelet or nothing. It was her dad, King Thingol, who had given his future son-in-law the impossible task in exchange for Luthien's hand in marriage. But after Beren and Finrod left for Morgoth's Angband fortress, Luthien began to get a heavy feeling. She followed them. On her way, she found herself in a forested area. This is where she first met Huan. She tried to run from the Wolfhound, but he captured her in 2 leaps. He wondered what this elf was doing in these woods that Sauron's wolves frequented. He took Luthien to Celegorm and Curufin, who were out hunting with him. What happened next was a watershed moment in Huan and Celegorm's relationship. Under false pretense, Celegorm kidnapped Luthien. He wanted to marry her, which no doubt was because Luthien was the most beautiful girl out there, and he must have felt a certain kind of way for her. But in his heart, Celegorm was also nurturing the thought of an alliance with her father Thingol, the king of Doriath. Unfortunately for him, Huan would no longer have it. For all the things Huan had assisted Celegorm in, kidnapping innocent females didn't sit right with him. In Tolkien's world, Huan was a hound true of heart. He couldn't bear to watch Luthien held captive, so he spoke, for the first time, and showed her a way out of there. Luthien was mesmerized by Huan's speech. She embraced him firmly before he helped her escape. He even accompanied her to Carcharoth in search of Beren. The two of them became bound with a friendship that lasted until their last breaths. A tad melodramatic, but true. Huan faces off with Sauron. Huan faced Sauron in his most overconfident visage ever. Let's go ahead and see how exactly that came to be. Carcharoth, or the Isle of the Werewolves, was Sauron's post at the time, and he resided here with an army of werewolves, as the name suggests. Sauron had caught Beren and Finrod on their way to Morgoth and trapped them in a murky pit, and he continuously set his werewolves down there to maim them. By the time Luthien and Huan got to the bridge of Carcharoth, Sauron's werewolves had finished off most of the elves, including the brave Finrod. Receiving the intel on his new visitors, Sauron sent out more werewolves to greet them. He wanted to capture Luthien, who he felt would earn him great favor from Morgoth. But Huan upped the ante by killing all them beasts one by one, as though they were mere amateurs. Then Sauron sent Drauglin, the father of the werewolves and the first wolf ever bred by Morgoth, to them. Drauglin was a wicked piece of work, and he came upon Huan with all his might. They went back and forth, but in the end Huan overpowered him, lining his body with mortal gashes. With a mere drop of his life left in the tank, Drauglin ran off to warn Sauron. Limping his way up to Sauron's feet, he said, "Huan has arrived." Shocked by the revelation, Sauron gathered his wits and recollected the prophecy surrounding Huan. And then the Dark Lord in the making used his Maya powers to shapeshift into what he thought was the greatest wolf ever. Happy with his work, he went to get Huan, but as it turned out, his wolf form wasn't nearly enough. Huan shattered Sauron's bones so quick and fast that he was left to scrounge for his remains. He gathered himself momentarily, shapeshifting into a bat, and ran for it. And that, my friends, is how Sauron found himself utterly defeated by Huan. Huan becomes a free hound. If it had not been for Huan, Beren and Luthien would have been enslaved or killed, or both, on the very first day they had set out for those Silmarils. That is nothing but facts. And if you haven't peeped this glaring truth already, you're about to, one more time. So, after Huan and Luthien rescued Beren from Sauron and his werewolves, the great Hound returned to Celegorm. But when he returned, he found that karma had finally caught up with Celegorm. Upon Finrod's death, his designs of seizing the throne of Nargothrond lay bare. He and Curufin were banished, and they carried a deep grudge against Luthien, who they felt was the reason behind the whole expose. And it was just terrible luck when Luthien ran into Celegorm and his brother again on her way back to Doriath. This time, though, she was with her beau, Beren. As Celegorm and his brother attacked Luthien and Beren, Huan stood against Celegorm, defending his friends. This was the definitive moment when Huan entirely abandoned Celegorm's service. He was now a free hound, but Beren still had a job to do. He still hadn't gotten his hands on a Silmaril, so then he and Luthien got back on the horse. Huan correctly judged the couple, though passionate about being together, had little idea as to how they'd get past Morgoth's guard leading up to the fortress. So Huan accompanied them some distance. Then Huan spoke for a second time. He brought the skins of the dread Drauglin and Sauron's abandoned bat form and asked Beren and Luthien to disguise themselves with them. The lovers successfully tricked Morgoth's guards and reached Angband. Huan faces off with Carcharoth. The ultimate showdown of Huan's life was not with Sauron. It was against Carcharoth, a towering monster wolf Morgoth had created in anticipation of Huan. You see, when the great Hound of Valinor had crossed over to Middle-earth, he'd quickly gained a reputation. Sauron was not the only one privy to the prophecy about him. Morgoth was aware of it too, and the idea of an immortal and powerful hound siding with the elves made him a little uncomfortable. So Morgoth got down to creating the greatest wolf ever, Carcharoth. Morgoth reared him like a father, feeding him the living flesh of men and elves with his own hands, and pouring his evil thoughts inside him. Carcharoth became vicious and gigantic, even larger than Huan. If you want to know more about this near-impervious monster that could even destroy a Balrog, we have another video on him, Carcharoth Explored. Go check that out. Back to Luthien and Beren, who we'd left off at the Gates of Angband. The quest for the Silmarils was the single most dangerous they could have done. The thing involved some powerful magical spells from Luthien, putting the collective group of Carcharoth, Morgoth, and his Balrogs to sleep. I mean, go Luthien! That was absolutely unbelievable. Well, the good thing was both Luthien and Beren survived the ordeal. The bad thing was that they returned with nothing. They'd managed to steal one Silmaril, but that old boy had got lodged inside Carcharoth's belly when he'd bitten off Beren's hand, which held the stolen Silmaril. The Silmaril burned Carcharoth, while also powering him up at the same time as he fled southward in frenzy. He ravaged through everything and everyone on his rogue run. When he breached Doriath, King Thingol took a search party to try and catch him, and along went Huan and a one-handed Beren. Bear in mind that when Huan went on this hunt, he was likely aware he would go up against the greatest wolf ever, but that didn't cast a single shadow over his plans. Carcharoth exploded over them as soon as he saw them, severely injuring the king and then mortally injuring Beren. Huan intercepted the werewolf before he could drop any more bodies. In what was probably one of the most brutal, snarling battles ever in Tolkien's world, Huan fought Carcharoth. It was a dog-down duel of might, spirit, and grit, thoroughly epic. And ultimately, the crazed beasts brought each other to their ends. With Carcharoth dead and Huan fast speeding to his own demise, he spoke for the third time. He said goodbye to Luthien and Beren, who was about to die, or at least cross over into the halls of Mandos. And so the prophecy was fulfilled, as Carcharoth, the greatest, though also the vilest wolf ever, finally killed the Hound of Valinor. Marvelous verdict. The tale of Luthien and Beren is also the tale of the dauntless Hound of Valinor. Huan was a profoundly emotional creature, who never shied away from helping his friends, and eventually gave his life for it. Although he appears near invincible through the story, his end came as prophesized. He fought Carcharoth and killed him, and that was no middling feat. Carcharoth, with the Silmaril within, was a force that no one could tame, not even Morgoth himself. Aside from the werewolf's considerably abetted strength, he could also cut through the strongest of spells and sorcery, making him nigh unbeatable. But Huan cracked him. He was only too skilled at understanding evil motivations, having learned the skill from Vala Orome himself. He was able to catch Carcharoth a few moves in advance. His spiritual powers were solid, so his good could counter Carcharoth's evil too, mano a mano. But all good things must come to an end, as does this video. That'll be that from us, guys. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Take it easy, fam. Bye for now.